I used to think the worst part of living alone was the quiet. Now I know better. I moved into my apartment in October, a small second-floor unit above a laundromat. The kind of place with thin walls and a landlord who never answered his phone. My neighbor across the hall was an old man named Mr. Halloway. We weren't close. We nodded in the stairwell. He fed a stray cat that lived under the fire escape. That was the extent of it. Then in February, he died. I found out from the mailman, who mentioned it the way you'd mention a delayed package. Heart attack, apparently. Found 3 days later. I remember standing in my doorway that afternoon, staring at his door across the hall, feeling nothing in particular. Just a strange, hollow kind of ordinary. I didn't know then that his door would become the center of everything that followed. For about 2 weeks, nothing happened. His apartment sat empty. A cousin came once to collect a few boxes, and after that, silence. I told myself I wouldn't think about it, but I started noticing the doorbell. His doorbell. It has a specific sound, one of those old mechanical chimes, 2 notes, low then high. I'd hear it sometimes late at night, muffled through the wall, and assume it was a glitch. Old wiring. Buildings settle. Buildings make noises. I told myself that so many times it stopped sounding like a fact and started sounding like a prayer. The first time it happened directly to me was a Tuesday. I remember because I had laundry going downstairs and I was waiting for the buzzer. Instead, at 11:40 at night, my own doorbell rang. Not his, mine. I looked through the peephole and saw nothing. Empty hallway, the flickering fluorescent light doing its usual stutter. I didn't open it. Something in my chest told me not to, a kind of animal instinct I didn't examine too closely at the time. I went back to the couch and tried to convince myself it was kids messing around, or a delivery person confused about the unit number. Why did I keep making excuses instead of just calling someone? I think some part of me already knew that no excuse would hold. 3 nights later it rang again, same time, almost to the minute. This time I opened the door immediately, fast, before I could talk myself out of it. Nobody there. But the air in the hallway felt wrong, thick somehow, like right before a storm, and there was a smell I couldn't place, something like wet soil and old pennies. I stood there a long time just breathing it in, waiting for it to make sense. It never did. I mentioned it to a coworker the next day, casually, the way you mention a weird dream. She laughed and said the building was probably haunted. Haha, old buildings always are. I laughed too. But that night I didn't sleep well, and around 3 a.m., I woke up to the doorbell again. Except this time it wasn't the stuttering 2-note chime of my own bell. It was his. Mr. Halloway's doorbell, ringing through the wall from an apartment that had been empty for 3 weeks. I lay there in the dark, completely still, counting my own heartbeat like it was the only proof I still existed. Why didn't I just leave right then? The next morning I did something I'm not proud of. I went and stood in front of his door for almost 10 minutes, just looking at it, at the little brass numbers, at the faint outline where a welcome mat used to be. I don't know what I expected to find. I knocked, once, quietly, like I was afraid of waking someone. No answer, obviously. Nobody lived there. And yet I swore I heard, just behind the door, the soft shuffle of feet on carpet. Slow, deliberate, getting closer to the door instead of moving away from it. I told the landlord. He said the unit was empty, no utilities on, nothing to worry about, and hung up before I could describe the sound of the doorbell chiming from inside a dead man's apartment. Nobody believed me. Not the landlord, not my coworker, not even myself in the daylight hours when the whole thing felt distant and almost silly. But the nights were a different country, In the nights, I believed every second of it. It escalated on a Thursday. I remember the date because it was my mother's birthday, and I'd stayed up late talking to her on the phone. After I hung up, sometime past midnight, both doorbells rang at once, mine and his. Two chimes, overlapping, out of sync, like two different rhythms trying to become the same song. I didn't move from the couch. I couldn't. My whole body had gone rigid, the way it does in a nightmare when you're trying to run and your legs won't listen. The bells rang 3 times each, and then stopped, and the silence afterward was worse than the noise. A listening kind of silence, like something on the other side of my door was waiting to see what I'd do next. I finally opened it. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that fear was just a feeling and not a fact. The hallway was empty, but his door, Mr. Halloway's door, was open. Not wide, just a few inches. A black seam of darkness where there should have been a locked, empty apartment. I could smell that same wet soil, old penny smell, stronger now, drifting into the hallway like breath. And from inside, so faint I told myself I imagined it, I heard someone say my name. I want to tell you I ran. I want to tell you I called the police, or my mother, or anyone. Instead, I stood frozen in my own doorway for what felt like an hour but was probably 90 seconds, watching that black gap in his doorframe, waiting for it to widen or close, waiting for anything to happen so the waiting would stop. It didn't widen. It didn't close either. Eventually, I stepped back into my apartment and shut my own door and sat with my back against it until the sun came up. Why do we do that? Sit with our backs against doors like our own weight could hold back something that doesn't have a body to push. In the morning, his door was closed again. Locked when I tested the handle, which I only did because I needed to know I hadn't dreamed it. I moved out 6 weeks later. Told the landlord it was a job relocation. He didn't ask questions, which told me he'd heard this story before, or some version of it, from whoever lived in that unit before me. I think about that sometimes. How many people stood exactly where I stood, listening to a dead man's doorbell, before deciding it was easier to leave than to understand? I live somewhere else now, a house with a bell that only rings when someone presses it, or at least that's what I tell myself. But 2 nights ago, I heard it. 2 notes, low then high, at 11:40 at night, and nobody was standing on my porch when I looked. I haven't opened the door yet. I don't know if I will. But I keep thinking about that black seam of darkness in Mr. Halloway's doorframe, and the sound of my own name drifting out of it. And I understand now that some doors don't stay behind you just because you've moved. I used to think the worst part of living alone was the quiet. Now I know the worst part is what answers back when you break it.